you gotta be safe when you get this money. This internet money. This internet money.
Internet money jumping, got me jumping in. Bull market coming, we about to pump again. A lot of people left the game, had a change of plans. Long money got the short money changing hands. Take your time, maybe you can make some dividends. Buying whole, only method I can recommend. Buy the lows for you know what you be making ends. Where it stop, nobody knows, though it all depends. They say the trend is your friend up until the end. All these exes got me about to do a double spin. Keep the change, ain't no need for the double sin. Blockchain got the block boys bubbling. No bank, no thank you, I'm my own man. You know I like to keep my wallet in my own pants. Life's a gamble, got the right to take my own chance. A little different, yeah, I like to do my own dance. Gotta keep my own keys and my own coins. Top flight security, I keep it on point. Gotta keep the seed and phrase under lock and key. Gotta keep...
What is up, everybody? KG here, founder of the Internet Money crypto wallet on Android, iOS, and Chrome. Open source. We collect no data. Amazing place to swap your crypto assets. Tons of amazing features. Awesome community. It's a great place to be in crypto. Now, one of the things we like to do in the Internet Money community is talk to other projects, other founders, other ecosystems, because there's a lot of exciting things going on in crypto outside of what we're building as well. And we take these deep dive streams as an opportunity to learn about what other people are doing. We approach all projects we interview on these streams unbiasedly. Nor Internet Money in any way, shape, or form has been paid to chill, paid to do this stream. This stream was requested. The founder that I'll be streaming with today, he streamed with me a few weeks back. We had a great conversation. I respect him as a human being. And we just felt like this was a good fit to bring on the stream and deep dive. In short, he's building a project, ecosystem, and I'll let him tell you a lot more about it. But it's on Ethereum and PulseChain. And those are two ecosystems that we love very much around the Internet Money community and the Internet Money wallet. So we're going to take a little bit of time to get an introduction into the project, but we're also going to break it down and deep dive. We're going to get into the tokenomics, the game theory. We're going to talk about security, practices, philosophy, community. On this stream, we're not afraid to ask the hard questions. And I always prepare the founders that we're going to ask the hard questions and be prepared to answer them. And he was, which was a huge point in the positive column, if you will, because if people don't want to answer certain questions, you've got to kind of ask the question yourself, you know, what that could imply. Not saying it does necessarily, but what could it imply? That's the purpose of these streams. When we talk about do your own research, that's what we're doing here. We're working to deliver unbiased information so that you can learn about crypto in general, and you can make a decision about if you want to pursue any particular product, project, ecosystem. We want to give you the tools to make your own autonomous decision, which means we explore the good, the bad, the ugly, the awesome, all of it. So if you have any questions, drop them in the comments. I'll do my best to get to all of them. Super chats do get 100% answered, and time permitting, we do our best to get to all questions. So I'm going to take a quick 15-second transition, and I'll jump back on with the founder for this interview.
Got my own keys and my own coins. Gotta protect this money. Took too long for me to get it. Can't let them take this from me.
I'd like to introduce the founder of Torus and Unity.win, my friend CRYPTOGRFX. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, KG. Thanks so much for having me on. This is going to be fun. I know our last conversation was like one of my favorite that I've had in the last while, so I'm looking forward to round two.
That was a very good stream. We started on crypto, ended somewhere in between we're real and we're not real. And then we decided, hey, let's bring it back to crypto and talk about what you're building.
It was such a good stream. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to this. This is going to be great. Thanks for having me. And yeah, this is going to be fun.
Absolutely. And if you're watching, please hit that like button. If you're on X, hit retweet, hit that follow button, subscribe, all the good things. We appreciate everybody's support. Shout out to everybody in the chat. I do see your comments there. Now let's go ahead and just start out from the basics. My understanding, I'm not even going to tell you my understanding of the protocol, just my understanding of the foundation is you have two identical ecosystems. One is built on PulseChain, one is built on Ethereum. Those are Unity and Torus. They're in the testnet phase, I believe, currently. But other than that, I'm going to be learning alongside everybody else here. So take us from ground zero. What do we got?
Yeah, well, do you have the link for testnet? I think having this visual aspect of it is really, really important because it's similar to a lot of things, but unlike anything in totality. So I've seen a lot of people get a little bit confused when it just comes to words and looking at stuff on screen without having anything tangible. But yeah, both of these, so PulseChain and Ethereum, they're this exact same system. So if you understand one, you understand the other. The biggest thing that you got to figure out really is, do you like the token that it's built on top of more over here, or make decisions based on that. But Unity is built over on PulseChain, and it is built on top of PulseX. Okay, so what that means is you need PulseX or Pulse to get into Unity, and then on the Ethereum side, you'll need either Ethereum or TitanX, and that's to get into Torus. So Torus and Unity are both the way I like to think of it in a very overly simplistic way is, let's think about Bitcoin. Bitcoin has mining capacity, right? Where there's major profitability for the miners when the price of Bitcoin and the rewards go above the costs, right? So that's like your mining side. We see the mining in TitanX, we've seen mining in Zen, we've seen mining elsewhere in crypto. It's not a new thing, right? Mining is like really profitable when the prices go up. And staking is best when prices are lower. So that way, by the time, prices are rising again, you basically DCA that whole bottom point. But there's never been a system that's been able to combine those in one synchronized fashion. So the way I like to think of it is, what could Bitcoin be worth if you could stake your Bitcoin to earn some of the block rewards, if it ever made sense? Like, what would that do to the price? If miners, instead of just holding their bag at the bottom and just waiting, or if users could grab their Bitcoin and they could stake it to compete for block rewards, what might that do to the value of BTC? That might be insane. Give it more use case, right? That means any market condition, essentially, you could make your BTC work for you, right? You could possibly mine when prices are high and then stake on the way down, all the way through the bear market if you just want to hold, right? It could do amazing things. And that's Torus and Unity in a nutshell. It's that same concept of taking two different market conditions and being able to leverage both of those market conditions or any market condition to always make your bag work for you. That's the overarching premise in a nutshell of both Torus and Unity.
Okay. I hear you from a theoretical perspective, I suppose, of the game theory there. So let's take just one, whatever one you feel like talking about more, whether it's, okay, Torus is the Ethereum version, right? Unity
Correct.
is the PulseChain version.
Yep.
So whatever one you feel like talking about more, maybe it's Torus because we have do you have the Unity testnet or only Torus?
Torus so far.
Okay.
Unity will, I don't know if, I'm not 100% sure if we're going to do the Unity testnet, just looking at how simple things are versus deploying on Ethereum, but we're debating whether we can make it work or not, whether we want to make it work. So right now, I guess I'll refer to Torus, but every time I refer to Torus, Unity is also the exact same conversation, the exact same thing. I'm just going to refer to Torus so it's not confusing. So we're looking at Torus, and it's not this, direction or attention being pulled in different directions.
I agree.
Sorry, you were saying with Torus specifically, I guess I could explain. This is the landing page. So when we get into Torus and Unity, what you're going to find is there's a ton of moving parts. There's difficulty metrics. There is a separate pool for supply. There's creating, there's staking, there's shares in the system. There's a staking fee which is the first time I've seen this actually in a protocol, which also scales over time. And so there's a lot of moving parts here, but I want the viewers to all remember that every time we go into these deep rabbit holes, this is how simple Torus is from a user perspective right here. You show up to the dApp, you look at this ROI on the create side, and then you click on the little stake button up above the little UI there. And then you look at the ROI for staking, and whichever ROI is bigger, that's typically the action you want to take.
Interesting.
That's how simple Torus is in a nutshell. So everything else we talk about is just understanding how to use this system over time, what the value prop is over time, and what it might do in terms of how it affects the token it's built on top of, and how that might affect Torus or Unity in the long run as well. So, but this is all it is. Your granny could show up and look at these two numbers and be like, okay, that one's bigger. I'm going to go with that one. Done.
Okay, I hear that. That's a really cool presentation of the information and user experience of helping users, make the right decision. And so you could imagine it. We'll reel this back in, but you can imagine there will probably be some arbitrage that'll kind of always keep these numbers fluctuating around similar yields, right? Because it's like, oh, if you see a delta here, well, then I'm going to go stake. But if I see a delta here, I'm going to go create. So I can maybe see, this little action here. And question for you, because obviously people are going to see this and think, oh man, 1,000% ROI. Do you think that because maybe this is testnet and there's lower participation, do you think that these numbers will be in line with this on mainnet, or do you foresee them being lower when it actually goes live?
It depends on participation. It totally depends on participation. Now, what I want to do is explain why this number is the way it is. So, because I think that's the most important thing for people to understand. What I will say is with these numbers, I'll stick to just explaining why this is the way it is. This is testnet. I have no idea what's going to happen when it comes mainnet.
Sure.
But there aren't so many users using testnet, but there is a lot of Titanx being minted for this dApp. So I don't know. And then people were using it in the beginning. The ROI was a lot lower. Now it's like 1,000% versus it was like 400 or 500% a handful of days ago. So things have been changing rapidly. So I would take this as just testnet, but the way this ROI works is it's an intent. It's a ROI designed to give you a rough estimate and not a guarantee that looks into the future. So it looks, okay, since you have earn length in there of 88 days, the system says, okay, over the next 88 days, what is the total shares that are going to be in the system if I add up every single day, and then divide that by the number of days that you've selected for your duration. And that's going to give an average number of shares over that time. The system then says, okay, based on the shares that you get, how does that relate to the average that we're projecting into the future based on right here, right now, assuming no one else comes in? That is where this ROI comes from. It's a rough average, but the reason it had to be like this is so that it's not crazy. Because originally we realized it was sitting at like 30,000% ROI for a couple of days. And I was looking at this like, something's not right here. Like there's no way. And what we realized was in the original calculation, it was just looking at the shares, or basically the shares that you had, and it was looking each day how much of the total you would get. And because the system projects out 88 days, and people could have started 2 days prior, there'd be 2 empty days or 3 empty days. And so all of a sudden, if you went like for an 85 day, it would be a reasonable ROI. But as soon as you go to like an 88 day, it'd be like 35,000% ROI because it's not calculating anyone being out there yet. So this is an approximation that's within reason. This is never a guarantee, which is why there's, estimated, not a guarantee. It's like participation is going to change, but it shouldn't be like you see 1,000% ROI and you get 50% ROI. Like that's never going to happen. Not unless you're day one, you're like moment one, and you click create, and then everyone else comes in after you. But typically, once the system is off and running, once it's going, you're going to see a roughly accurate ROI within reason, and it will change over time because it's based on participation. So it's completely unpredictable, but this will be roughly close.
So in short, or maybe in addition, would you say that it's a true statement that if there is less participation, your ROI is higher?
Correct.
Okay. But then you might just have an empty, who cares? You could have all the tokens maybe, and no one's buying them, so like maybe there's a balance there of like, you want participation and lack of participation. There's probably some good middle ground there.
It's an interesting thought experiment, because on the one hand, if you get a ton of participation, so if you look at the price on testnet, does it say 246? I think it is right now, 245 at the very top, where it says market price.
245.
So the reason that price is there is because Torus is going to launch at a 10 million, or it'll launch at a ratio of 10 million Titanx to 1 Torus. The reason this is important to understand is because when we go look at how the system gives out tokens, or where the supply comes from that people are actually earning, this is where this ROI comes from. And this is really important to understand why this ROI can be so high. So over the first 88 days, there's 8.5 million tokens that come out over the first 88 days. So if we do some quick and rough math, $2.45 times 8.5 million, we're sitting at about 20 something million dollars worth of tokens at that price. Right? So the thing to understand here is that, like you said, this arbitrage point's the key to this. So people will come in, and if 20 something million dollars were to come into the protocol day one, on average, everyone would get a 100% ROI, right? You can think about it like because everyone gets tokens up front as their base creation value, as their principal, we'll call it, that guarantees some tokens at the end, right? Like that's what the creation principle is. You get tokens up front. That's what's guaranteed to you at the end. And then everything else on top is an estimation, right? And so if 20 some odd million dollars comes in and it matches the amount in the pool, well, they create 20 something million dollars worth of Torus, and then that gets distributed. So it's 100% ROI. So really 40 or 50 million dollars can come into this, and everyone still gets a 50% ROI. And that every time you double, that cuts in half. So this pool is quite elastic at the moment. And it can handle quite a bit. So even if a lot of economic energy comes in, it's not a bad thing. Not a bad thing at all. And in fact, due to the way the system takes in economic energy and utilizes it, it's actually a fantastic thing. The only thing that would necessarily not be fantastic for this system is if, if only a handful of people came in. I don't think that's a possibility, just because of, how much marketing I'm doing, how much work I'm putting in to get everyone to know about Torus and Unity. But it would only be something of like an issue if, a very, very, very small amount of people came in. If even a reasonable amount of people come in, it's totally fine.
Well, and yeah, I hear what you're saying there. And you could say that, okay, if a lot of people come in and the ROI is less, well, that would theoretically probably mean that the price per token would be more. So even if you got less physical tokens, the price would be higher. So it's okay. Let's reel it back in a little bit, and let's go through the actual thought of, hey, I want to participate in this system. I want to get myself some Torus. Walk me through that first step.
Yep. So if you were to come here on whatever day and you were thinking, okay, I want to play Torus, I want to do a creation or a stake, you're going to show up with your ETH or your Titanx, and you are going to look at those two ROIs, and you're going to see, okay, which one's bigger. Now, in the case that and for testnet, ETH is disabled just to make things simple, but when this goes to mainnet, you can do either one. Unity will have Pulse or PulseX. So you've got your ETH or your Titanx, you show up here, or your Pulse or your PulseX, and let's say the staking ROI is higher. What that means is now you're going to want to go and you're going to want to buy Torus or Unity on the market. You're going to want to take a little bit of ETH, Titanx, or Pulse or PulseX, depending on which one you're playing. And you're going to want to keep that on the side as your staking fee. And then you're going to be able to come in and stake in the system. If the creation ROI is higher, you're going to take the tokens that you brought to the table to see what was going on, and you're just going to deposit those into the contract. And that's going to just create a principal amount for you on the day, and then you're going to earn over the next 88 days, just like staking. That's really how simple Torus is. It's come to the dApp. What am I being told to do here? Done.
Okay, so staking, the actual mechanic of that is you go buy Torus on or Unity on the open market. If you're on, again, for those just joining us, Torus is on Ethereum, Unity is on PulseChain.
Mm-hmm.
So you go to we'll keep talking about Torus here. You go to the open market, you buy Torus. I own Torus now. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Then I go and I stake that Torus that I just bought on the open market, and that is where this ROI comes in. And now the ROI in the staking case, is that based on new Torus that will be created as a reward for my stake being completed?
It's yes. I just want to make sure the wording's getting right. So basically, when you stake, this is what's really cool about this system is staking and creating are both earning from the same spot. Meaning you can imagine there's one pool called the Torus pool that supplies tokens out every single day, and it looks for shares. And if you'll notice between the stake and the create tab, there's shares on the stake side, and there's also, you get Torus shares for staking, and you also get Torus shares for creating. And so the system just says, hey, who's got shares? But the reason you want two actions here, so that way, but depending on the market conditions, then you have different avenues to leverage the prices and make your bag grow fastest. But yes, staking doesn't earn from an external source other than creation. They're both earning from the exact same spot. So actually creations and stakes could be competing together and will be competing against each other pretty much at all times, which is a really unique thing about Torus and Unity.
I see. Okay, so there is one pool where, let's call it the inflation. I know it's kind of a bad word, but just to get the concept, right? There is one pool that the new Torus enters the system from, right?
Mm-hmm.
And okay, so let's ask a couple questions there. Is there a max amount of Torus, or does it inflate within that pool as well?
There is a max amount of Torus, actually. So there's a supply is capped at 125 million. I don't actually know if it ever reaches 125 million tokens. It may reach a little bit above that because there's some creation going on as well. But due to the starting ratio of Torus, and Unity, right? Both of these tokens are probably going to have a hard time as these prices rise of PLSX and TitanX. It's going to be harder and harder to create because PLSX and TitanX are both going to be more valuable. And so therefore it's going to be harder to get more TitanX to then create up front, right? So there's going to be less creation inflation, which is going to mean that there is less extra inflation other than that expected supply over time of 125 million. And that's 125 million is going out like 20 years. This is a perpetual protocol. So it always is working. It never stops. It's always ever so slightly getting more difficult by the day. And that difficulty is actually 0.08% that the costs of or the amount of tokens that you can create get you for the same amount of PLSX or TitanX. The staking fee and the staking costs also follow that. So the staking gets more expensive over time. And also the Torus pool, where the tokens come from, is also decaying every single day by 0.08%.
Decaying in terms of less available to grab, basically?
Yes. Sorry, that might have been a weird word to use, but
no, good word. I got you. Okay, so to be clear, the supply cap of 125 million-ish, is that actually fixed and defined, or is it just, hey, it's going to get so outlandish and abstract that growing beyond that is ridiculous, but hey, it technically can?
No, it's the Torus pool, like where the main source of inflation comes from in the system, where the main token distribution comes from, main token supply. That's fixed.
Okay. Okay.
What can and will make that increase is the creation action itself, but this depends on prices and how much will actually come into existence and stay in existence. Because the second part of this conversation, to understand why that number is likely to stay at about 125 million, is because of the buy and burn. The buy and burn in both Torus and Unity are massive. It's 84% of the economic energy coming in to the system is dedicated to buying and burning the tokens. That's huge. Now, 8% is dedicated to building the liquidity, and 4.31% is dedicated to buying and burning the token that's underneath. So Torus will buy and burn TitanX, Unity will buy and burn PLSX. And then there's the last little bit, which is 3.69%, is to an address called Genesis, which is a no expectations address for both protocols as well.
Okay. Buy and burns are cool. I like buy and burns. We have a buy and burn in our system. Are you familiar with Axis Alive? If
course.
Not, yeah, he put it so elegantly, I think, that buy and burns are a tokenomic that he thinks are going to be basically the standard for every next generation token. It's almost like if you don't have some element of a buy and burn going on in your token, you're no longer the standard. You know what I mean? So I personally am a proponent of buy and burns because, look, you could, the old version was, hey, dev wallet burns tokens. Well, doesn't matter because those tokens never hit the market. They just created more supply and then deleted supply. That doesn't do anything. But when you buy, and this, I'm just talking to everybody else. When you buy a token off the open market, you put buy pressure, which is usually a good thing. And then you physically delete it from existence. So basically it's a buyer that only pushes the price up. Maybe it's a tiny bit, maybe it's a lot, maybe it's negligible, but it's a buyer in the system that only pushes the price up and makes the asset more rare. So if you're not familiar with buy and burns, they're one of my favorite tokenomics, and I almost see no reason. I could see reasons, but for all intents and purposes, for projects to not have them. So I like buy and burns. Just wanted to put that out there. But okay, before we dive into that, because I do want to, let me get one more clicking piece here. Okay.
Yep.
So I understand now that whether you're staking or you're creating, you are, maybe I don't. Let me ask one more clarifying question here. If I create, I'm not technically creating so much so as more so I'm taking from the pool. I'm not, because you're not minting really, are you? Or are you minting?
The verb I've been using is earning. So you're creating and you're earning.
Okay, I see. So you're not physically, like, the tokens already exist. You're not minting new tokens into existence when you hit create.
You are minting a set. So if you go to the create tab, and what you'll see over there under the on the right side of that interface is there's deposit created Torus. So this is the part that you are minting yourself. This is not system generated from the Torus pool. That's what you're generating. And this decays. So over time, that 10 billion Torus amount, 10 billion TitanX deposit cost for that power level there is eventually going to only create like 0.2 Torus for the same amount. It gets really, really, really difficult over time. So, and the thing to understand here is when you're putting $1 in and the system is buying back at least 84% of what you put in terms of, that's the buy and burn, right? The buy and burn is going to buy back with 84% of the economic energy that comes in. That should cover at least 84%, right, of those created tokens. So, and not always, it's not like a flat number, not a fixed number, but on a rough kind of average, if you want to think of it like that, it has the capability to. Now, there's also the buy and build, which is buying and putting Torus into the liquidity pool. There's the liquidity fees, which get burnt from Torus. And there are also penalties, which burn Torus as well. So all of this considered, that these created tokens are going to be much less of an issue than you might think at first, because of the amount of extra burning that's going on in the background, how deflationary Torus makes its system.
I hear that. Okay. So then I guess I am missing a point. So you have the pool. Again, these are usually bad words in crypto, but just trying to have simple framing. You have the central pool that the rewards get distributed from. If I'm wrong, please correct my language. And those rewards are earned by stakers. Now, this created Torus, these tokens are not coming from that central pool. They are physically getting minted in addition to.
Yes.
Okay. Got it. Okay. So, all right. So let's say I create my Torus and the earn length is 88 days. The tokens you're earning are coming from that central pool, or are those being minted in addition to?
Those are coming from that central pool.
Got it. So just the initial creation is new Torus, and the rewards earned thereafter come from that pool for creations and stakes.
Exactly. Yep.
Got it. Okay. Okay. Clicked. Now, let's now pivot back to the buy and burn. So you said that 84% of all of the Titan X and PulseX for Unity goes into buying Torus off the open market and burning it. 8% goes into buying Torus, or how does the liquidity add work? How does that 8% work?
So it's called the buy and build.
Okay.
And it's very, very similar to the buy and burn contract. So what it does there, if you see the next buy and build, we're under the buy Torus with Titan X, it shows $773 there. What it will do is take half of that, buy Torus, keep the other half in Titan X, and then place them both in liquidity, full range, each time that interval is called. And that's a fixed rate of every 10 minutes.
Okay, so you're doing V2 liquidity on this, or
V3 it'll be.
Okay,
Yep.
Cool. So there's no public call functions here. This is just running itself.
So sorry, this every 10 minutes it will be callable.
Understood.
Yes.
Okay. I'm also a fan of public call functions because, again, in the internet money system, in our buy and burn, it is a public call function, which is great because it keeps it decentralized, but takes this burden of having the system always having to do its thing. It's a great middle ground. It really is. I'm a fan of public call functions too.
Me too, man. That's why we did this the way we did. So,
okay. So, all right. 8% goes to the liquidity, the buy and build. And so let's say here's an example. Let's call this $800. We got $800 of Titan X in this example. $400 worth of that Titan X is going to buy Torus off the open market. Now we have $400 of Titan X, $400 of Torus. We're putting that in liquidity.
Yep, correct.
Got it. Okay. And
so one thing this also means too, just to point out.
Oh, go ahead.
We say 84% buy and burn, but if you look at the total systemic buy pressure, so what actually is pushing the price of Torus up, it's actually 88 cents on every dollar, because 8%, right? 50% of that 8% is actually buying Torus. So the actual total buy pressure is 88 cents on every dollar.
I see what okay. That's a good point. So even though this 4% isn't getting burned, it's still getting bought and then it's actually being put right back in. So you get that positive buy pressure, then you get the strengthening of the pool, which, hey, look, if you're out there, you're watching and you want to sell into that, well, you can, because the liquidity's there. Now, question there, does anybody control the keys to this buy and build wallet, or is that liquidity effectively burned and inaccessible?
So it's inaccessible in terms of being able to change anything. The smart contract owns the pool. It can't be removed. It can't, nothing can be added, or nothing can be removed. Sorry. Obviously, it's going to keep getting added to. The only thing that can be changed, so Genesis has the ability to change the amount per 10 minutes that can be spent within a certain threshold, within a 1% to 10% of the contract balance. That's all it can do, is change it within that. It was a hybrid decision because I've seen completely centralized protocols where, you know, the person or the central authority has keys to, you know, basically burn everything or buy and burn everything in one shot, or to turn it completely off, or to have wildly different or unexpected times, or shut things down completely. And this, after looking at full centralization versus full decentralization, this was a perfect happy medium where it seemed like, depending on what happens in its infancy, Torus and Unity can have a small guiding hand that can support it and make sure that it's not over or underutilizing its resources within a certain threshold. And this is the same for the buy and burn and the buy and build. Now, another aspect of this that's interesting is the buy and build, and this is actually kind of unique to Unity and Torus as well. So again, all these controls that I'm talking about here, they can only operate within a small threshold. They can't go outside of that window. And so when it comes to the buy and build, there's a possibility that someday, somehow, you know, these protocols get so successful. Like let's say PulseChain goes to the absolute freaking moon, right? And then Unity's built on top and its liquidity is like $100 million. Why on earth would it ever make sense to keep buying and building liquidity? That's almost like a value leak in a way, right? So what can actually be changed is the buy and burn or buy and build can be adjusted down from 8% to 0. But what happens with that is that gets redirected to the buy and burn. So bumping the buy and burn up to now 92%. And that same parameter can happen with the PLSX or Titan X burn, where it can only be turned down if it ever needed to, increasing even further the buy and burn to now 96.31%. So there are some central controls, but they're only within these small windows, and they can't be utilized to like extract all the funds or like, you know, pump it once. It's impossible. And one thing I'll say on that too is the Torus and Unity tokens are designed to be compatible with governance. And I'll just throw that out there, but that is part of the token design as well.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll get there. We'll unpack that.
Yep.
So let's unpack a little bit more of what you said there. Okay. So if I understand correctly, if the buy and build gets turned down, is it an automatic response that percentage gets added to the buy and burn? You don't have that decision. It's just, if you turn it down 1%, the buy and burn gets turned up 1% by default, or is it mirrored completely like that?
Yeah, it's mirrored completely. Like there's no, as soon as the buy and build gets adjusted, it automatically diverts those funds that should have gone to the buy and build to the buy and burn. There is no say in it in the matter. There is no messing with that. It is an automatic default action that the contract does.
Okay. And see, that's interesting too, because even if you turn the liquidity ad down, if you're buying and burning, it is increasing. The action of a buy and burn is still, in essence, a liquidity ad.
Yep.
Because you're still putting, like in this example, right? Let's say we use Torus and ETH. The desired asset is the ETH. no offense to Torus or any other token, but like people want the ETH, right? And for all intents and purposes.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, if you're adding more ETH into the system in the form of a buy, well, that means there's more ETH to take. So that makes sense. So now what if you do it the other way? What if you can you turn the buy and burn down to 50%? And would that add that percentage over to the buy and build, or is it only a one way?
It's only one way. The buy and burn cannot be changed. It can only increase from there. There is a caveat because this system has a 2-phase launch.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be a starting launch where the system is going to start at 28% going to the buy and build. This is like a liquidity phase, I'm going to call it.
Mm-hmm.
So the buy and build has a liquidity phase of starting at 28%. The buy and burn starts at 64%. Once the system gets to, I believe, around 2 trillion in the contract of Titan for this, because it's an easy example, then boom, switches over. Once it's locked there, now it can only be changed higher. Each time it starts at 64, goes up to 84, and then can only increase from there. And that might that phase could take a day, it could take an hour, it could take a week to get to that point. I don't know how long it will take to get there, but once that happens, switches over, and then the buy and burn cranks right up.
So that's not a function that anybody has to call. It's going to detect unit of token threshold has been reached. It's not a USD value where it relies on some oracle or something. It's just, hey, we detect X amount of tokens in the contract, execute function.
I believe, you know what though? I might be getting this confused with another aspect. There's been so many tweaks and changes we've been making with numbers and correcting things the last little while because we're going into audits. Now that I'm thinking about it, I do actually think that might actually be a manual switch. Now that I think about it, that might be a point where it looks at, okay, I have to switch, or this has to be switched, and then it gets switched over, then it's good to go. I think that's actually what it is. And I think the decision for that was these contracts are quite complex already to make this system work. And I think it was just to simplify things and to make sure that it got a little weird the more we thought about it, because it was like, it depends on the price of the tokens. It depends on, there's many factors that went into it. So we decided to make it manual just to make things simplified, and it's not like things can go in favor of, can't be changed in between that, more or less. It can't be like, oh, I'm going to change the buy and burn even less and crank the liquidity up even more, or vice versa. It's those fixed figures that are right there. And then when they switch over, now they're set in stone. And then it can only have those other little changes that are made in the future.
I gotcha. Okay. So, I mean, playing devil's advocate, I suppose, if looking, I guess, at the positive of that is, yeah, so there's an element of trust there, right? That can't be ignored. That can't, you listening, you have to accept that there's an element of trust. But even in this element of trust, you're talking about a 64% buy and burn versus an 84%. And you're talking about a 28% buy and build, adding liquidity, versus an 8%. So even in that element of trust, the reality still isn't inherently negative unless you believe that the system's only going to work if the buy and burn is 84%. And so if that's something you're thinking, well, then yes, you have to trust that switch is going to be flipped to 84%. But it's not like the switch is no buy and burn or buy and burn, right? So there's still, again, when you're out there doing your own research, everybody listening, weigh the pros and cons of all these different things, because some things are significantly more dangerous in the realm of trust than others. So just okay,
for sure. Can I do one comment on that real quick?
Yeah,
like I just want to say too, it's like I chose these parameters. I knew that there's going to be people that are not going to like it. They're going to be like, nope, there's trust, or it should be completely decentralized, or I don't like Genesis. I knew that there was going to be people that don't like the way that some of the system is designed, and I'm totally fine with that. You know, I know that this is a different system, and I believe that the way that this is set up allows both Torus and Unity to have the greatest impact on PulseX, PulseChain, and TitanX, and I mean, maybe ETH. I don't know. That's maybe a bigger ask, but you know, specifically TitanX, by having this bit of flexibility, right? Like, it's a compromise that I was willing to make, but I also compromised on my compromise. Like, instead of being like, oh, I want all these controls to make it perfect, it's like controls within a window. So I don't ask anyone to trust me. If you don't trust me at all, that's fine. Let the protocol speak through its action, and then make your decision over time if you don't think that it's something you want to get involved in. And yeah, I'm totally okay with that. I understand, you know, that's to be expected to some degree at a minimum.
Okay, understood. And, you know, appreciate you even saying that. Some people don't even admit the areas where they have to be trusted. So, all right, I want to dive into the tokenomics a little bit more, but then I want to circle back to some other surrounding elements of this.
Sure.
So, and just to be clear, the genesis, okay, no, wait, there's another important, two other important elements here. You have the 4.3%. Tell me about how that works, because that's going to be really, PulseChain people, I think, well, they really care about PulseX being bought and burned, PulseX being burned. That's a really big narrative for PulseX. PulseX has a native buy and burn based on the PulseX DEX. It's going crazy. It's doing great. So buying and burning PulseX is a thing that the PulseX people like. So let's just for a moment talk about that concept with using PulseX as the example.
Great. So I actually love this. This is what I think this is one of my favorite things about one of the small favorite nuances of this. So normally what happens is funds go into a buy and burn, and then when the call happens, they slowly get burned. It slowly buys and burns a little bit of the token. And that's kind of like the famous way that these buy and burns often work. But with Unity and Torus, but for Unity with PLSX, I think everyone's going to love this, because what happens is as soon as someone comes into the Unity system with either Pulse or PulseX, if it's PulseX, immediately on the transaction of creating or staking, 4.31% of that amount of PulseX that comes in is immediately sent to the dead address and burned.
That's cool.
Same goes for the Pulse, though, but the Pulse buys PulseX and then burns it within that transaction. So what this means is if there's a ton of action going on, you're going to see a ton of PulseX getting burnt immediately. It's not going to be delayed. It's going to be based on user participation instantaneously. And that's going to be really fun to watch. So you'll see real-time stats. It won't be delayed. It'll be like the moment there's participation, you'll see a crank up in the PulseX being burnt.
I think those stats are going to be very important, because that's going to be a cool number to track. Because if somebody goes and takes their PulseX and participates in the system, then okay, some of that's being deleted off the market, which they bought it before that. So it's technically a buy and burn in that aspect. But if they use Pulse and they come into the system, it's going to take, call it 4-ish% of that Pulse, buy PulseX and burn it. So, and then obviously the same goes for TitanX on the Torus side.
Yep, exactly. And for the Pulse side into PulseX, so other than 3.69%, which is the Genesis stuff, everything else, if people only ever came into the system with Pulse, basically 97% or 96% of all the economic energy comes in, if it was only ever in Pulse, is forced into PulseX first. So it's forcing buy pressure. If people want to come in Pulse, almost all that Pulse is getting forced and pushing up the price of PulseX relative to Pulse. And on top of that, then it's also burning some of it as well. So it's the way the system was designed was to create forced demand, forced buy pressure, and forced burning into PulseX, which feeds back into Unity, which creates more demand because people want to play ball in Unity more. Like, it's that feedback loop of like people coming into one spot, which is creating a bunch of different angles of buy pressure, demand, and burning happening all simultaneously.
Okay. Hear that. And so talking about the Genesis, I'll let you answer the question, but that's just 3.69% of, in this case, Torus and Unity, all the Titan and ETH. Just if someone comes in with $100, the Genesis gets $3.69.
Exactly.
And is there expectations on the Genesis, or is that a no expectations part of the system?
It's a no expectations part of the system. That's for, yeah.
Okay. Now, all these percentages we talked about, do those apply for, in this example, Titan X and Ethereum, or is there a different split if someone's using Ethereum versus if someone's using Titan X or, Pulse X and Pulse?
It's just flat across the board, whatever comes in.
So it's 84, 8, 4.3, 3.69, regardless of whether you come in with that. Okay.
Yep.
So
exactly.
Okay. So then if someone comes in with Pulse X on that 8% buy and build, it's going to be building a Pulse X liquidity pool. But if they come in with Pulse, it's going to be building a Pulse liquidity pool. So there's kind of two main pools per asset here.
Let me actually clarify, because I'm glad you're bringing this up. So there's only going to be one liquidity pool with either tokens. So this is what I mean by all of the Pulse. So in the buy and build, and let's look at Torus because we've got this here. It says buy ETH, buy Torus with ETH, buy Torus with Titan X. For the Unity, it will be buy Unity with Pulse, buy Unity with Pulse X. All of the Pulse and ETH in the separate contracts, they have to, every bit of that has to buy Pulse X first, and then it buys Unity or Torus, and then places it in the either the Pulse X and Unity LP or the Titan X and Torus LP. There's no secondary LP. It's focusing on one. So this has the potential to pull a ton of Pulse X off the market and lock it into liquidity as well, which is going to be great. I'm really excited to see that happen, actually. But there's two contracts, in the Pulse and the Pulse X, or the Pulse always buys 100% with using the 100% of the Pulse in each of the contracts to buy Pulse X first once it's in the contract.
So if somebody comes in with Pulse, let's use again Torus here. So somebody comes in with Titan X, ETH.
Yep.
That buy and build percentage will then buy Titan X and then fulfill the buy and build.
Exactly. Yeah. It doesn't like take from one and deposit into the next contract. It's straight shot all the way to completion of the task.
I understand. Okay. Anything else? If I understand it correctly, we broke down all the percentages. We got there. No other percentages. That adds up to 100% to me.
Yep.
Okay.
That's everything. Yeah. I don't know. There's, in terms of the percentages and the way all the buy and burns and buy and builds and everything works, the only thing I guess we haven't talked about is what's called the fractal, which is like a little time vault that's within only the buy and burn. So what this is like you have the buy and burn contract, and when funds are being sent there, 28% of what's supposed to be sent to the buy and burn is diverted to this time vault, which actually puts the funds back into the buy and burn every 110 days. So this was designed to make sure that there are always funds in the system. And even if the buy and burn runs low or dry, people can always look to the fractal and know, okay, there's still funds in there and those are coming in X number of days. So people can always have some sort of assurance that the system does have economic energy to utilize in the future.
How does money end up here? I didn't quite follow that.
Gotcha. So 84% buy and burn, correct? Right?
Yes. Yep.
Of that number, 28% is, or basically a quarter of that, is sent to the fractal.
Okay.
And stored for 110 days.
Okay. So even though 84% of every bot or every creator stake, 84%, okay, 84% of the buy and burn pressure, only 54, it's call it 55% ish. I'm sure there's, yeah, I'm blanking on the live math. 84 minus 28.
Math's terrible on stream.
80. Geez. Okay. Hold on. Let me get this right number. 84 minus 20. Okay. So 56% of the actual buy and burn pressure gets deployed immediately. Every transaction. 28% goes here to be delayed.
Exactly.
Okay, but it's still technically 84%. Some is now okay. Now this is automatically, is this another public call function, or is this just running automatically once every 110 days it hits?
This is actually one of the only automatic functions. So once 110 switches over, it just kicks everything over to the contract. It's actually, I guess it's technically still in the contract. It's just kind of like frozen and, it's kind of diverted, but this switches over and allows it to actually be accessed on day 110.
That's interesting because there's going to be some interesting game theory, I think, around this, because look, if this thing builds up to a reasonable amount, those other buy and burns are going to be little chipping away. This could be for a minute. So you might see some speculative buying before that. You might see some hard dumping after that. Like, there's going to be some game theory around what this, depending on how powerful it is at that moment, I would imagine.
Right. And to clarify on that too, like, this isn't something that goes, it's like, let's say looking at the balance here, it says 1.87 million. That doesn't immediately go to the price chart. That gets deposited into the contract. But what that means now is that 1 to 10% of that can be used per day. So if let's say there was like 10 grand in the buy and burn at that point, and all of a sudden now there's 1.8 million and it's still 1% of that, that's still 18K now a day versus, I don't know, $100 than it was before. So significantly more buy pressure. And if it was turned up to 10% of the contract balance per day, then things are getting a little spicy. So it's still going to have that same kind of potential effect.
I hear what you're saying,
but not to the same degree.
Okay. So then I think there's another number that I need to clarify as well. And that is, I remember you talking about it. I guess it didn't click earlier. Was that 1 to 10%, which is controllable within 1 to 10%, no more, no less. First of all, is that point true? No more, no less, 1 to 10%?
Yep.
Okay. So the buy and burn, it's not actually buying and burning every transaction. Is it buying and burning once a day then? Is that what you mean there?
No. So 1%. So what's going to happen is if it's set to, let's say 1%, that 1% number means that 1% of the contract balance at the start of that day will be spent, basically divided up into every 10 minutes throughout the day.
I see. I understand. I got you. Yeah. Okay. But that's decided at the beginning of the day, and anything that builds up during that day is then allocated towards the calculations of the following day.
Yes, correct.
I got you. Okay. That makes sense. So minimum of 1%, maximum of 10%. And I could see maybe that control being there because it's like, well, look, if $1.8 million comes in and, well, let's say on day one, you had $1,000 in there, you might want to do 10% to make it a little beefier. But if $2 million comes in, 10% might be overkill. Exactly. You might get hit with front running, or you might get weird slippage that just wastes economic energy. So I can see there being this sliding scale, and maybe, with the governance potential that your assets, the ecosystem has, maybe there's a case to be made later on for the community together could make that governance decision of, you know what? No, we want the candle today. That's what we care about today. No,
exactly.
So I could see that. Okay. Oh, I do want to ask some other questions on, we can pull that back up if we need to, but I do want to ask some other questions on, you said audits. You're undergoing audits as you speak. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. We have 2 right now happening.
Are you open to share the companies of those audits who are performing them?
I hadn't even thought about that. I mean, I don't see why not. One of them is well, I can share one for sure. I just got to check on the other one because the way the deal that with the team that I'm working with, I'm covering one specific audit personally, and part of the build was team supplying other audits. So the one company that I'm working with is Aether Security,
like
AETHER Security, yeah, and they've done many Titanx specific ecosystem tokens. There's never been a single issue. They've been fantastic. I got a quote actually from what's the company name? They're one of the companies that was on Uniswap's recent whitelisted auditor list that they posted not long ago, and I decided against going with them mostly because of timeline. But I was really surprised when they asked the same thing. Hey, do you mind me asking, like, okay, you went with someone else, who'd you go with? And I told them Aether, and they were like, oh, great. Yeah, you're in good hands. Awesome. So I was like, oh, okay, well, that's actually really reassuring. So that was a really cool moment.
So that's aethersecurity.io. I
think so. Yeah, it's like a white page. It's very okay, good. Yep.
That's what I'm looking at here. Okay, security audits are good. And I take it, and just, again, a general disclaimer to everybody. This is not a specific dig at CryptoGraphics here, but in general, security audits do not mean that something is flawless. Because again, human beings audit code, and human beings can miss something. But so when if you see, and who knows, maybe the security audit says, hey, don't put your money here, they'll steal all your money, but they still post a security audit because they don't think people are going to read it or whatever. So you actually have to read audits. You actually have.
No, you muted yourself there, KG.
Can you hear me okay?
Oh yeah, loud and clear. And you're muted. Oh, yeah.
Testing. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay. So long story short, you have to make sure that the team actually fulfilled the things that were found on an audit. We've gone through the audit process several times with the wallet, with our contracts, and they always find something because that's what they're hired to do. And so if you're out there and you're listening and you see somebody has an audit, they actually have to fix any issues that are found, send the code back to the audit firm, and the audit firm will update the audit to say that something was resolved, mitigated, acknowledged, whatever. So just wanted to say that audits don't guarantee safety, but they are at least a good step. But you still need, while you're doing your own research, to verify that it actually reads good and they actually did the important things. So yeah, I just wanted to put, because again, we have a lot of people that are watching that, look, we recognize this. We were just so deep into crypto weeds, and everyone says DYOR, do your own research. It's not just easy to go do your own research. Where do you go? What's the right research? So we like to always try to give those tidbits.
For sure. Well, I think it's super important for people to understand too that audits don't guarantee the success of a protocol. Like there's levels to what goes into it. It's like there's the systemic design of it. How good is it systemically designed for the long term? How does the system actually work as time goes on? That's an economic audit that needs to happen, or
yes,
that's a whole different thing potentially depending on the sophistication. And so you have to ask the question of, okay, how well is this designed? How far into the future was this thought out? How many different relationships are within the system that have been calculated for, not calculated for? And there is really a lot, especially with something like Torus. Like, it's a complex system. There's a lot of moving parts. We honestly haven't even touched on the deepest stuff of this. You're not even close yet. The Torus.
Oh, wow.
There's a lot. There's a lot going on. And so the point is not to, okay, on that note, please remember when I say that Torus is complex and Unity is complex, go back to the DApp, look at the page, and remember that all you have to do is look at the ROI. That's how simple it is from a user experience. But on the back end, to the terms of the audits, this is why, I was saying earlier when I was first talking about Torus and Unity is I want people to not trust me. I want people to see my work, see what's been built, see how it's operating, and learn to trust based on how things actually are, not what I tell you they are or what code or what the white paper says, but actually, like, yes, go and read the white papers, find someone that can read into the white papers, make sure things look good, someone that even can read the code roughly, right? Because that's all going to be public, and really make sure this thing is a solid. I mean, you know, in my case, I'm as doxed as it get. I have a freaking book with my full name on it out there that I released to the PulseChain community that people have. Like, I've got, you know, I'm as public as it gets. You know, I go by CRYPTOGRFX, but my name's Steve, and you could go find my book on Amazon and you'll get my full name. And so, you know, I have every reason to be as honest and open as I can. And I want to lean into that too, and make sure that people still aren't being like, trust me, because I'm public. We've seen that before where people have been like, oh, I'm public, here's me. And then they've rugged people. So just because I'm public too, don't trust me, trust my work, look at it and watch it in real time. And, you know, I would say operate based on that. That's the way I look at things, especially for all this.
That, and I'm sure, first of all, to the game theory point, I'm sure we can keep breaking it down. But to your other point about being public also doesn't mean safety. It doesn't. In the last couple years, I've seen many projects, many products rug, fail, get hacked, that have completely public founders, and you never hear from them again. So attackers will use these things, not saying anything negative about,
of course,
yourself. Just, again, we're putting disclaimers, helping people do research. People can use these trust virtue signals to get you to come into the system, and then they hurt you anyway. So just, there's always this ebb and flow of risk management and understanding the trust points. That's such a big thing for me when I'm investing in a project, when I'm even going to use a product, even if it's not actually going to me buying a token or whatever, is understanding the trust points, understanding what can go wrong within those trust points, and then identifying how much trust am I willing to give it, and if it's some, how much dollars am I willing to attach to that trust? What's the value? Hey, I'm willing to use this sketchy dApp, $5. That's all I'm willing to put into this sketchy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
So, okay. So another question I'd like to ask, and again, I leave it open to you to answer or not answer. Are you open to talk about your team building this?
Of course. You know what? They're incredible.
Okay.
Buildthetech.com. You know, Rags to Riches, Brandon Davis. He's the head honcho. It's his company.
Okay.
And I am so thrilled to be working with them. I would recommend them to literally everyone. They've been amazing to work with. They're so transparent. They have an incredibly seasoned team. But I think it's buildthetech.com. I think it is.
Yep. I just pulled it up. Yep. Definitely Brandon Davis. I recognize this guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you're using his company. Yeah. And I saw, actually, you know, I knew that he pushed that company out. I know that they've been growing that. I think maybe I heard that they were working with some of the developers from the Aave protocol, maybe on Ethereum. I don't quote me on that, everybody. I could be completely false. But so what's your experience? So your experience has been good with them so far? Engineers seem very knowledgeable and high quality. Yeah.
It's like I found like my team.
Oh, that's
you know,
great.
It's like, okay, okay, if there are if not saying there are, but if there are going to be other things built in the future, I have the people already locked down, and you know, these are the only people that I want to work with.
That's okay. I'm sure he'll be happy to hear that. I've always had a respect for Brandon. I've always taken him as a stand-up quality individual. So I can assume at the very least that his team is probably the same, because
yeah, it's amazing. Honestly, everyone that I get to work with. So there's Brandon and two others that I get to work with mainly, and the different levels of knowledge but the depth of knowledge they all have just makes it incredible for brainstorming and troubleshooting and all these different complex issues that come up, when designing something like Torus or Unity, and really working through like years in the future problems like, oh, what about this thing? What about that thing? And we all put our heads together, and it's like a think tank that has been honestly part of the reason why Torus and Unity have come together in the way that they have, with all these little micro nuances. Like if someone asked, if you were asking me like, did you actually create Torus all on your own? I could never say yes. Because from the beginning, it's been conversations from people that literally said to me like, oh, I'm a pleb, but this is what I think, so you're probably not going to listen to me. And I was like, my God, that's a brilliant idea. I'm going to use that. And all these different conversations that I've had from people that literally refer to themselves as plebs to professional engineers and beyond, they've all shaped Torus in some of the most important ways imaginable. And so, having a team like this is beyond valuable, beyond worth its weight in gold.
I can hear what you're saying. That, and it's cool of you and humble of you to admit that you didn't come up with every single point on your own, and that this is an amalgamation of your team, your community, the people that believe in you, and yourself. And I think that's also important for a founder to admit, is that no project can ever be successful because of the founder alone. If there is no vibrant community, there is no successful project. Whether you're somebody with one follower and it's your first day in crypto, or you're a gigabrain mastermind, a community is comprised of every single level of human being. So that's a cool social point, and I'm sure your community appreciates you feeling that way about them.
I hope so. I think they do. But it's like it's just true, because when it comes down to it, it's like, where do all these ideas come from? Like can you point to the place where that idea that you had came from? Like, how do you know it's yours? Like, if you look at all the ideas that are out there, they're usually some kind of thing. There is something that was inspired by something else, and that what's interesting is where that connection comes from. But like Torus and Unity are an amalgamation of BTC, the supply curve, right? Super like hyperinflationary in the beginning, and then tapers off to super difficult to hyper disinflationary. But then it has the hex staking model in there with shares in a share system, but then also borrows this mining aspect as well. And so it's like, it's just three aspects put together in a unique way. And, I would dare even say at the deepest level, it's like, I can't even, you can't take any credit really for it, because everyone else has put the pieces out there. And it was just like kind of looking at things in the right way and be like, hey, wait a second, what if, so it's, that's the way I approach it. It's hard to see it as mine. It's fun. My ego loves it, where I'm like, oh yeah, I created this thing. And then I'm like, wait a second, there's nothing happening. No, hold on here. In a philosophical standpoint, everything just is. So I kind of have to reel myself in, but yeah, it's the way I approach it.
I love that. And I'm going to circle back to that. I just want to say, I want to get to some questions. I see a few questions in the chat. I'm going to pull them up here in just a moment.
Great.
So we'll try to get to all of them. But if you drop a super chat, we'll definitely get to those. And it's not even about the money. I don't care if you do 99 cents. Super chats help the YouTube algorithm. So we guarantee answering super chats. Put the lowest amount of money on there that it'll let you. I want to boost the algo. So, all super chats will be answered regardless of the amount of the super chat that they are. But we'll try to get to the rest of the questions. So, yeah, as far as your philosophy there, I think that's very important. And it's okay to have some ego, because, at some point there is that conscious mind that actually has to sit there and work the idea. But you're right. Can you really take credit for, hey, you're making yourself a sandwich and you have an epiphany? How can you take that credit? Because it just, there it is. So yeah, that place where ideas come from, that's important to recognize. And we all have access to that place. It's just, I think if we're an antenna and that's a radio station, how can you attune or affix your antenna to pick up on those frequencies, if you will. Vibes.
The vibes, man. But you raised a really good point, though. It's like, oh, what was he just gonna say? Oh my God, it's gone. Where did it go? Speaking of things coming in, they also can leave quickly too.
They leave.
So I don't know. Maybe that'll come back, but it was something to do with. Right. Okay, here we are. Thank you. I think you're right though. It's important to at least be aware and know your own ego and all that, because it's important. And when your ego is combined with your mental energy, your mental capacity, your mental body, like especially from a founder, I'm sure you know this, from being a founder and having to market and having to speak all the time about it, or not even having to, but wanting to, right? And wanting to get this thing out there. Like you kind of need to, like, marketing takes a certain flavor of language, a certain, portrayal of an idea to get it across. Because I mean, without marketing, without portraying ideas in a captivating and enticing way, they're just ones and zeros at best, in code. And we need these memetics, these narratives. So the egoic mind is incredibly important to harness. But yeah, you're right. It's like making sure you could go into, okay, I'm going into conscious marketing mode. I'm going to step into that. And then I'm also going to remember simultaneously, which is just easier said than done, of like, okay, that ain't me. It's just part of the process and I'm going to utilize it, but I'm not going to get lost in it. But it can be intoxicating sometimes, as I'm sure we all know all too well.
Well said. Well said. And the phrase I like to apply to that is keeping your passions within due bounds. And your ego is definitely one of those passions.
Absolutely. That's good. I love that saying.
Okay. So definitely, again, we're going to have a philosophy stream. It's been I sometimes do this stream called either Philosophical Sunday or Midnight Ramblings. So you're definitely on the next one.
Nice.
So,
okay, let's go.
I usually do a panel of like 4 or 5 people, and we just have a topic and just unpack it.
I love it. That sounds amazing.
All right. So let's go ahead and dive into these questions. So we'll start off with wants to know if we're cousins.
Honestly, in a past life, we might have been. I don't know.
We'll compare family trees.
We'll have to get back to you on that one.
Yeah. All right. So this one, I don't know exactly when he asked it, but he says, it was when you were talking about the tokenomics. He says, so a low key squeeze if users blow up, maybe that has more relevance to you. I didn't quite get what it meant.
I would need more context because I'm in the same boat as you. I don't understand what he means by if users blow up and where the squeeze is happening. I would need more context. I'm happy to talk about it. I just, like you, I just need a little more context.
All right, Kamari, go ahead. If you're still watching, follow up what you meant by that. We'll circle back to it. Let's see. Oh, here's another one. Can we turn it into a buy and burn beard? So I guess the beards are not a crowd. They don't like it. They're not crowd friendly.
What? K-Flow, bro. I thought we were friends. You want to burn the beard? Bro.
All right. So Nicholas says, where does the reward pool come from? Now, I'll let you answer this, but Nicholas, if you go back to the stream, we really broke it down and deep dove into that, but go ahead.
Yeah, it's called the Torus pool. This is the reward pool is called the Torus pool, but this is where the main supply, the inflation, the scary inflation word, that's where that comes out. And it's emitted every single day. So people are, like Hex's supply comes from people staking and earning it, right? That's like the central, that staking, and that the mechanism that actually mints people tokens comes from that central pool. I don't know if it's called a pool though. It's more just like it's just the T-share payouts, right? Can't even remember what it is now with Hex, but it's a similar action where there's just a sum per day of the total future supply that's going to come in. The difference is with Torus and Unity is that it's capped. It's not increasingly minting more over time. It's decreasingly minting less over time. So this is a fixed amount that declines ever so slightly per day to get to its max amount, called the Torus pool if it's on Ethereum, or the Unity pool on PulseChain. So I hope that was clear.
Okay. So Don Montoya, shout out to Don Montoya, says QQ, which I'm guessing is quick question. Cool protocol. Seems well thought out. Great use case and built by a solid team. How do you fund this?
How do I or how did I?
Maybe let's go both.
Okay. I basically funded it out of pocket, and there's no sacrifice.
Okay,
It's all pre-funded to build it before it goes live. There's nothing that is needed from the community to get this out in the public.
All right. So fully self-funded, built idea to creation, continued funding.
How do I continued funding for?
I think, Don, feel free to ask, or feel free to follow up. But basically what I think he's asking is ongoing development costs, website maintenance, insert, hey, you're going to potentially, hypothetically develop governance, all those things.
I would say you can probably see Genesis making some moves if there's going to be things to be built.
I see. Okay. Yeah. And I mean, again, like you said, if your stamp on it is no expectations on the Genesis, but right, it's getting 3.69% of the protocol revenue. So out there doing your own research, again, this is a trust point.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that the Genesis will or will not allocate those funds? I don't have that answer. I'm not going to tell you one way or another because I truly don't know. That's a trust point that you out there listening have to decide if you want to participate in.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Oh, this one I think is, hey, KG, quick question. I love DBank, but since they removed PulseChain, cannot find an equivalent. What about to add this feature to the Internet Money Wallet? Okay. So basically, Space is asking for watch-only addresses within the Internet Money Wallet that shows things like liquidity pools and all your DeFi. Who knows? We could hook it up to things like track your Torus and Unity stakes within the Internet Money Wallet, So all those cool things. That's actually something we've talked about, is building front ends for these various protocols. So like, rather than people in this case, we could say, rather than people having to connect to a dApp and flip back and forth or do whatever, they could just have a front end, pull out their iPhone, have a front end right there, and they can just create, stake, Torus, Unity, do all these things, So that's something that interests you guys. We could talk about that a little more offline, but in general, to answer your question, Space, that is high on the priority list for us, but we don't have that functionality just yet.
Sweet. That's exciting.
Dejin Dougie says, when off-ramp, again, probably internet money. We have on-ramp. We have a fiat on-ramp. So look, again, if you want to get into Torus and Unity, you could pull out your debit card, Apple Pay, Google Pay, buy ETH, buy Pulse, create stake if you want to do that. But off-ramp, again, high on the priority list, but we do have the on-ramp. All right. Oh, look, and KJ came in and saved K-Flow. So, all right. Well, that's all the questions that came up in chat. I'm sure we could still unpack more game theory. If we need to have a session 2 where we don't start from the beginning, we start from using this stream as context. But I'd like to keep it digestible. So is there anything else that you want to speak to? Is there anything that we didn't hit that you think is important to hit? What else do you want to talk about?
Yeah, I think there's maybe 2 things. One, I really want to hit home on this relationship between the creation and the staking aspect of these 2 protocols, because Crypto Nobody brings up a great point, which is for staking, there is actually an early end stake feature specific to the staking at the 50% mark. So this means at the 50% mark, you can actually remove what you staked, but you forfeit all your penalties. Now, as you get closer to that 100% mark, you get more and more of your penalties, similar to how hex staking was or is. But you can never lose in the system what you've created or what you've staked as your principal through the penalties. So I think this is one of the highlights that I think is a good, an important one. So thank you, Crypto Nobody, for that. And again, when penalties are taken, 50% are burned and 50% are put back into the system for the next day's rewards. So if people are early end staking, you could see a bigger payout the next day than normal, which is actually really cool game theory, because you could see all sorts of fluctuations over time if people are taking too long or they're early end staking. There's some interesting stuff that could happen with the penalties there. But the main thing I wanted to focus on, and does that make sense before I go on anything else? Is that clear?
So when you say penalties, you actually just mean the unrealized rewards by the staker. There's not actually a quote penalty.
Correct. Yeah, it's called a penalty, but it's really on what you've earned, right? It's not like you're losing from what you were going to get from your earned tokens only. The penalties never takes away from what you already owned or what you created, right? So it's never detracting from your underlying principle that you put into the system. It's only removing from what you were earning as your penalties. So what that means is you could be penalized in a way where you don't earn anything over 88 days. Right.
I see.
But that's it. You're never going to. So it's a really safe system. I wanted it to be where the penalties are very clear. There's a ton of stuff going on the dashboard. There's pop-ups that warn you and tell you exactly what's going to happen with all the token amounts, what you are going to get, what you're not going to get, what the penalties are, so that every time you're making a decision, there's not this ambiguity. There's not, I clicked the button and I don't know what happened and I lost everything. I didn't want Torus or Unity to be like that. So that's from both the creation side and the staking side. Any penalties that happen work like that.
Okay, and so are you unable to end your stake prior to 50%? You have to complete 50%.
Correct.
Okay, so then if you complete, let's say you complete right at the mark, 50%, not a second more, you're then going to just get your principal back, no rewards. And then the other 50% of the rewards that I call it 50% of the time of the rewards, those all get boosted to other stakers and creators. Yeah.
So you get 50% mark. That stake has earned a certain amount of Torus or Unity, right? It gets split in half.
I see.
Equally. 50% is burned forever. The other 50% is deposited back into or accounted for and brought into the next day's total for rewards for users.
I see. So the remaining 50% or insert time here that was not completed, those rewards just aren't factored in. It's factored in on the rewards earned at the time the stake was ended.
Exactly.
Okay. So another deflationary mechanic.
Exactly. This is what I'm saying. Where there's a lot of these little nuances in the system where it's like it's a lot. There's a lot going on there.
I see.
What was the other thing I was going to bring up now? I think it was the relationship between the creating and staking. I really, really, really want people to understand this, because I didn't just arbitrarily choose creating and staking as two mechanics and in hope that people could always just earn yield. If we look at the way this is supposed to work, right? You've got this middle ground here, right? Which is like the break even, the ratio of 10 million to 1, let's say, right? When the price of Torus goes up relative to that point, so in Titanx terms, or if we want to talk about Unity and PulseX, if Unity goes up in value from that starting point against PulseX, typically in a mining style protocol, people are much more likely to be in profit, right? In a typical mining protocol, what that would mean is, because there's not really staking, or if there is staking, you have to stake for like 10 years or of substantial length of time in order to get some yield, right? There's a little bit of a disconnect there. And so when the prices go down, people will hold because they don't want to stake for 10 years, or they'll sell and leave, right? And so what happens though if you allow people to do a mining like action, but then as soon as the prices get below a certain threshold, now they have a very, very, very good reason to stay in the system and lock up their tokens for only 88 days versus 10 years or whatever the time is, right? Now, what that means is actually really, really important. And this is the crux of the system, is that when you have basically 84% buy and burn, you have the 8% buy and build, so you have a ton of buy pressure from the system, right? When the system goes into what's called staking mode, it's not really staking mode, but I'll refer to it as staking mode because that's when people are only going to want to stake. Then you have two things that happen. One, people are actually incentivized to buy it on the market to get into the staking pool, which pushes the price up. Users are actually locking up their tokens for 88 days. They're bringing in more economic energy in order to stake, right? Because there's a small staking fee in that. So they're adding to the buy and burn. Market pressure is pushing it up. Now they're locking up tokens, and this is freeing up the buy and burn to have much less sell pressure because everyone's going after the rewards, and then to push the price back up into the creation zone again. And so this is the premise of Unity and Torus, of where there's never this down forever mechanic, because when the price goes down, people get a deal on getting into the system to get an ROI. And then this is the other catch too. Unlike other protocols that have like these long stakes, having the system work in 88-day increments is actually really, really important. The reason for this is because at the 88-day mark, if let's say you and I have stakes or creations that end, the system removes its shares immediately. And that means the ROI gets boosted for everyone else still in the protocol over the next while. So what could happen is, if let's say a mass amount of people go in on day 1, right? When they come back out and they're going to go back in after their shares are removed, the ROI is going to be massive. And so they have to make a decision. Am I going to leave and just let this massive ROI just sit here? Or am I going to go back in again? And if it's high enough, they'll be tempted not to sell and go back in, which maintains that price from being sold down and alleviates and allows the system to then push itself back up over time.
I can see what you're saying. It obviously, there's some more that I need to unpack to fully grasp it. But I think at the high level, well, at least what I took from it was that there are mechanisms in place and financial incentives to have the system sort of self-correct itself in these periods of, oh, hey, this part of the system is not doing what I want, or is not getting the yield that I want to see. Oh, but this part of the system is. And then so there's always going to be this, like, the same users in some way could kind of continue to derive more value. And it doesn't always necessarily have to be we need more users game. There's different ways the same players can play the game and still get different. So where I'm looking for angles of value, I suppose. So I can see I can see that. And like Don said a little bit earlier, clearly you've really thought this thing out. Or your team has.
I've thought it personally out. I mean, I've had more than I care to admit conversations with my team and with others really thinking this out. I mean, at this point, I've understood this protocol so well that, I kind of, the amount of, I'm waiting for people to catch up. I'm just excited to see people slowly start to dig into this and slowly get all the parameters and slowly understand all the relationships, because it's just going to be fun to see people like have little mini awakenings of like, oh wow, oh my God, it's because I've had so many of those of like, are you kidding me? Like, this is how it's going to work. And so yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
And so I guess my final question, just general curiosity, is, Are you seeing a community develop around this? Are people excited? I mean, obviously you're playing off of, or you are building on top of, however you want to frame that, into the Titanx community, into the PulseChain community. Are you seeing more or less acceptance, rallying on either side? Like what's that response been like so far?
It's actually been really interesting. So the Titanx community has been rallying behind it. People are like getting quite excited about Torus. People are really starting to get it, starting to see the potential. And I mean, there's been on X over the last number of days since testnet's gone live, it's just been a ton of activity, a ton of people talking about it, a ton of people sharing it around. There's been like 100, I think over 100 and some people have joined the Telegram in the last number of days, which coming from 400 and some odd, it's a pretty big increase.
Sure.
So like it's been building pretty quick. But what's been interesting, and this is partially because I have been focusing my efforts on Torus because it's launching first, and to not, confuse people. When coming up to Torus launch, I want to focus mostly on Torus, but be getting Unity out there, and then I can switch over a little bit more with the marketing. But I have noticed that getting the PulseChain side out has been a little trickier. It's been harder to get acceptance on that front. And, I've shared it out to many, many individuals, and it doesn't matter who they are, but it's been difficult to really get a lot of PulseChain individuals to want to pay attention. Luckily, we connected, we've had chats, we streamed together, this has been great. And so there are great people like you, and not to say they're not great people if they don't stream with me. That's kind of gaslighting as hell, but but I have been lucky enough to, have guys like you, and I think who else has been. Either way, it's been interesting with PulseChain. I see a little bit of a different response in willingness to see something like Unity come over to PulseChain. And, I can understand why, honestly. PulseChain's had a lot of, a lot of shit happen over the last number of years. And there's been a lot of bad actors. And so, man, I get it. I'm never going to ask them to change, but it's just the way it is. It's like, okay, I'm just going to have to keep on my thing and keep hammering on the same points. And I'm not changing what I'm doing, whether everyone likes it or not. This is something that I truly believe in, and I'm going to do, and I absolutely love. And it's really an expression of who I am. And I feel like the need to really push that out there. It's, so it will happen no matter what, but it's definitely been a little trickier so far. It might change when, if there's a testnet that comes out, or, when I really start focusing on the Unity side of things. But yeah, it's been interesting to see how few people are interested in looking into it on the PulseChain side so far. We'll see. Yeah. Anyways, though.
No, I'm glad you brought that up. And as somebody who's been a PulseChain builder since before there was a PulseChain to build on, what I've noticed about the PulseChain community, and it's actually, you could call it a curse, but it actually, look, no curse is blessing free, just like no blessing is curse free. Mm-hmm. It forges good stuff, because we've seen a lot of people, and I'm not saying this is you, just speaking from the PulseChain community's perspective, great ideas, rally things, get money, and then do weird things, literally scam, the project fails, the idea never launches, insert thing here. And so what I noticed goes a long way with the PulseChain community is persistence and consistency. And when you actually launch on PulseChain, you're going to get hate. You're going to get, people coming at you. But as long as you, again, kind of step into the lion's den and just like you did today, answer all the questions, stay patient, give the answers, take the slings and arrows. For us, it's been great. I've seen it work for other builders. It's just about that persistence, that consistency, and the willingness to have the hard discussions, the uncomfortable discussions. And, you know, I hope that PulseChain does at least give you the opportunity to speak about it, because I think you've always brought good content to the crypto space. And I, for one, want to see PulseChain win. And so, you know, there's a risk for us to have these conversations with projects and stuff. But again, we're not endorsing anybody. But as a PulseChain builder, as someone who wants PulseChain to succeed, people have to build here. And some things are going to be great, and some things are going to suck. Some things are going to fail. Some things are going to be a success. But if we don't give builders the chance, then we're not creating a cool ecosystem to build in. So if as a PulseChain guy, as a PulseChain founder, as a PulseChain builder, keep it up. And I hope you succeed. But as long as you don't outright scam if you fail, that's a different story.
Of course. And you know what? It's not a bad thing. It's neither here nor there. You know, you can look at it as a bad thing, but then you can also look at it like, okay, what does that mean about the community? It means when they love something, they love it. They absolutely love it. And they will show up and literally like battle anybody. Literally, like there's no like, the polarity of the PulseChain community is incredible. And if you can give them something that's actually great, you have such an incredible community behind what you have.
Yep.
That's like, okay, that's worth fighting for. And, you know, if, you know, we're building in this space, it's obviously going to be a challenge, but the way I'm looking at it is, okay, it's an opportunity. It's going to be hard. There's going to be a lot of backlash. You know, I mean, people have seen a little bit of my journey, have known that, you know, I, at one point, I called out Richard Hart for something that happened back in the day. And I learned the full wrath of the PulseChain community at that point. And I found, okay, I see, understood. And, you know, I learned a lot in that moment, a lot about myself, but also a lot about the community in terms of just like, okay, that's what it's like for the community to, you know, be won over by something, someone, and then have someone come in. That's like, that's the passion that this community has for something. I think there's great power in that. And I just also want to shout out too, because I was saying, you know, we talked about, and you've brought me on here, but also Benjamin369, he's on X, and he actually had me on a number of his spaces, and he's been a gem. We've had conversations, and I want to shout out him as well, because yeah, he's given me a platform to speak on a few occasions now. And I'm really appreciative of you and him for giving me that outlet so far. But yeah, as far as the PulseChain community, I'm here no matter what, you know, and it's going to be a battle. So I'm going to try and make the most of it. And yeah, you are right though. Stepping into the lion's den is what's needed here for sure.
Yes, sir. Well said. And all right, on that note, I'm going to wrap up. If anybody wants to look further into CRYPTOGRFX, his Twitter handle is in the description below, on YouTube at the very least. If you want to, he has the links right there to the projects that we talked about, but those links are also in the description below here on YouTube. Anywhere you want to shout out specifically?
Yes, specifically. So right now I'm building up the Telegram, because for Torus, the audits are getting done. Then the UI is going to be finished very, very quickly. But the big thing, and I'm going to do this for both Unity and Torus, is if you like either protocol, go to, the Telegram, join the Telegram. We need 1,000 members in Torus before Torus launches. We need 1,000 members in Unity before Unity launches. And so it's t.me/Torus.win or t.me/Unity.win. And please go, even if you turn the notifications off and you never participate, but you are interested in Unity or Torus, please go and join just to show your support, and then ignore the hell out of me. And just pay attention enough to know it's, and then just pay attention enough to know it's launching, you know, or come in and hang out. We have VCs and stuff all the time. So it's a fun place.
Okay. Well, and I take you can find those also from the website.
From the website, also from the X pages. They're in the white papers. They're also on the testnet. Everywhere there's something to do with Torus or Unity, you have access to the Telegrams, the websites, the white papers. That's all circular.
Okay. Got it. And on that, I'm going to drop you down for 1 minute to give my closing thoughts. And hey, thanks for being here. I appreciate all your time.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate this.
All right. All right, everybody. That was definitely an information-packed stream. So if you were watching and you found yourself confused, I was confused at points. That's why I kept asking questions. I'm never afraid to ask questions about something I'm learning about, because that is doing your own research. And I'm not embarrassed to admit when I don't know something. And by not being embarrassed and by asking the question to fill that void, I'm constantly leveling up my crypto game. So even though I learned a lot of things about these projects in particular, I also have learned other golden nuggets about crypto through this process. And we'll break that down later. But in general, I'm always gaining those golden nuggets. And by gaining those, I'm building a vault of crypto knowledge, which helps me in everything I'm navigating. I'm starting to build this general radar, if you will, of things I like and don't like, things I feel like are good or not good, just almost as a sense. Not even, you can't even necessarily articulate it. It's a sense. And you can develop that too by having these conversations, by asking the good, the hard, and sometimes awkward questions. So if you found value in today's stream, please like, please subscribe, please retweet, repost, all those things. If there's any project that you want to see us interview, let us know. If one becomes of high demand, we're open to interview it. We can't interview everybody. There's a lot of projects out there, but we want to interview as many projects as possible, especially people who are doing unique things that we haven't really talked about before. You can go back on the channel and see some of the other projects we've interviewed. Again, this was not a paid stream. I don't have bags. The tokens don't even exist yet. This was strictly an informational stream, learning about a project and doing it in such a way, because I sincerely want everybody who watches this to equip themselves with the tools to ask good questions and protect themselves in the crypto space. So we talked about audits. We talked about game theory. We talked about dev team. We talked about so many things. And all these things go into, is this something good? Is this something bad? We learned about trust factors, and there's all these nuances that you really, as a crypto investor and a crypto DeFi astronaut, need to evolve and better and refine so that you can continue to survive and thrive in this space. So I hope you found value. We will continue to put out the content. We will continue to grow together, learn together, educate together. I appreciate every single human being who is a part of the Internet Money community, every user of the wallet. If you have not given Internet Money a try, we're available on Android, iOS, and Chrome. We're open source. We collect no data, and we're an amazing place to swap your crypto. My name is KG, founder of the Internet Money Wallet. And until next time, peace.
Got my own keys and my own coin. Gotta protect this money. Took too long for me to get it. Can't let them take this from me.